I appreciate Kevin and his family doing this and getting some folks together and talking about cattle and genetics and progress. And I think that's one thing that's exciting in our beef business right now, that we've had some really good years and we've had some really good times in this cattle business that we're eager to keep continuing that. And I think you're at a right place, and you're hooked up with the right firm that can deliver those type of things. So I excited to visit with you a little bit about what is going on at Hereford right now. For the last 2 years, or almost 2 years, I've served as the Director of Breed Improvement and Chief Operating Officer. Before that, I came from Colorado State and I was on faculty there, and background is in the commercial cattle operation, backgrounding and stocker cattle, and so I can relate with a lot of you folks in here, and definitely have a passion. Actually didn't grow up too far from Kevin, and so have definitely enjoyed getting to know him more the last couple of years. And him and I talk on a weekly basis because he's the incoming president of the board, and he's the chair of the Breed Improvement Committee, and so he keeps me in line, and we bounce a lot of ideas off of each other. But just to kind of talk a little bit of what I'm going to talk about is just our commitment to progress and moving forward here with Hereford. I wish this talk was a couple weeks from now, because I could give you an updated fiscal end of the year report. Our fiscal year at Hereford runs from September 1 to August 31, and so we're almost finished up with fiscal year 17. But I can tell you it looks very promising from a registration standpoint, and this is fiscal year last year, 16, is that we nearly hit 80,000 registrations, and that was the highest number of regs that we've had since 2000. We are going to hit 80,000 this year and go well over that, and so we're going to see an increase there as well. Our number of active adult members and active junior members is going to see an increase as well. We're excited about that. There's not only more people demanding, as you can see in our bulls. We sold 10% more bulls last spring, and that number again was up another 10%, or almost 12% that we sold. And those are just bulls that are recorded through our Hereford Publications department, guys that go and work the rings, Levi back there, and some of you guys that help him do that. Those are just kind of recorded through that. And so I think the demand is definitely increasing. I was talking with John Fisher earlier, and he says, as he goes out and sells semen to guys, is that they're demanding those Hereford genetics going in those black cows or red cows or heifers or whatever it may be. So that's encouraging to continue to get those reports. And then we do have a branded beef program, Certified Hereford Beef. We grew a little over 7% last year. It looks like we're going to be over 10% this year. And so each year as you start increasing and you keep increasing, that number's harder and harder to keep achieving. But I think the encouraging part about that is that we're continuing to see renewed interest in the breed, both from a registered standpoint, but from a commercial standpoint. And then, as we've alluded to several times tonight, as we get out into the retail side and the consumer side, folks are really gravitating to our product. A few slides I'm just going to talk about because it lends right into kind of the meat of my topic. And I want to give you a full kind of a circle of what I think. And again, I haven't worked for Hereford but 2 years, but I think some of the people that were so instrumental in this room helped form some of these programs that have leveraged the association to the point that it's at now. One of those would be, and excuse me here, I'm kind of talking into the camera and diving around. I usually end up towards the back of the room or trip over something and I'll probably do that, but I like moving around a little bit and talking. But whole herd reporting, our total performance records program, was started in 2001. And what that is that every member and every member that wants an EPD turned on on his animals, they have to kind of remain compliant, all right? And so before that was taking place, before we had that, folks were just turning in some of their best calves and ratioing on their best calves. Well, inadvertently, if you only ratio and only contemporary group 20 calves, you're going to split those top 20 into a good half and a bottom half. So we really weren't getting a great representation of what the breed makeup was within those herds. And so I give kudos to those board of directors and those thought leaders at that time, is that they require that every female, we have to turn in a cow inventory-based system, or a cow inventory-based system. So each year the member turns in how many cows they're going to had exposed and have a reproductive status with them, whether they calved, and a calving score along with that, and then we record a weaning weight on every calf as well. Okay, and so that's part of that system, and if you don't do that, you're not going to have EPDs. And I you know, Kevin and Sandhill's Farms has been a gold TPR breeder, and that's our highest achievement award that you have and can get. And they go above and beyond that. They're turning in all the birth weights. They're turning in all the yearling weights. They're scanning a big majority of their calf crop. They're recording scrotals on the bulls. And so they're taking it a step further with that total performance program, as well as a lot of our members. And that's really strengthened our genetic evaluation system. From an EPD standpoint, just as traits are concerned, when we just look at birth weight over the last 10 years, we've seen a reduction in 15%. Okay, and so that's taking that trait and reducing it, and a genetic trend over time, we've been able to lower birth weight, which is great. Okay, but at the same time, antagonistically, we've been able to increase weaning weight and yearling weight. And so creating more of those spread bulls, and there's a few of them running around out here, that bulls that can decrease pounds at birth, which is a good thing, and then add you the benefit on the back end. And so that's been a great improvement. And then the other thing that I like, that we've put a lot of emphasis on, is the improvement in end product merit, 30%. So we're talking about ribeye size, we're talking about marbling, talking about carcass weight, those things that pay the dividends. We have that improvement that we've seen in the last 30 years, and it's because of breeders reporting a lot of their whole calf crops, finding and selecting those bulls within their given year, making those mating decisions and improving on that, and then trying to give you the best breeding stock that we possibly can. The other thing that I think is an absolute stakehold within the Hereford Association is our Young Sire National Reference Sire program that we have. Okay, this was started in 1999, and it was an effort to get more real data, more real world data on progeny out of known Hereford sires and young sires. Not waiting till they're 5 or 8 years old, but testing those young bulls as yearlings, as 2-year-olds, and getting that information all the way. We're not just talking about weaning weight. We're just not talking about yearling weight. We're talking about all data from birth to harvest. Big contemporary groups, big commercial outfits that run it pretty rough, pretty rugged. And the first one, I believe, was the Olson Ranch in western Nebraska. They run 1,000 commercial Hereford cows. And it's a sight to see if you're ever up in Harrisburg, Nebraska. It's in the middle of kind of nowhere, almost Wyoming. And it's kind of a desolate place, but it's a great, I like going there. And you can spend 2 or 3 days just looking. It's like an encyclopedia of Hereford pedigrees. And you can see all the different bulls and the things that we've gone through. But what's exciting is to see the young group of females there and the improvement that we've made. And so we have that herd, the Staley Ranch in South Dakota, another commercial operation, and then Simplot Land and Livestock in Idaho. They run 30,000 cows. And that started as a heifer project. Simplot contacted the American Hereford Association and said, hey, we're losing too much heterosis and pounds and pregnancy rate because we've gone straight. Okay, just like what the talk that you heard about. It was a real world thing, and they said, we need to incorporate some Hereford back in these females. And so Jack Ward, Craig Huffines, they drew up a contract with Simplot, and it basically guaranteed if they were going to have a dystocia problem over X amount, was that we were going to have to foot the bill. Because they were just a little uneasy about, okay, I'm going to breed, Herefords, this was 8-9 years ago. I'm going to breed Herefords to first calf heifers. Can't do that. There's only black bulls can do that. So they were a little apprehensive. And we never paid them a dime, folks. We never paid them a dime. And that selection, again, I go back to our whole herd reporting, our database, and the quality of data that we get in from our breeders, and the validity that we have in our EPD system is that we, as a staff, and Jack at the time, we can sit down and really talk to these guys about, okay, we feel really confident in these genetics and we can put a lot of faith in behind them. And since then, I think the real success story there is that that 30,000 cow herd is that they want at least 3/8 to 5/8 Hereford in every single one of those mama cows from that research project. Okay, so I think that's a great testimony. Bob, it doesn't have quite the dollar and cents new Ford dually pickups or Dodges or anything like that, but I think it's equally as profound and kind of a bold of a statement. Here's some data. We just have, you saw a bull running out here, 167Y, that's running out here in the pen. His progeny are going to be turned in. They're on test right now. So we've got birth weight and weaning weight turned in on those calves, on their progeny, and then we're going to feed those out. They're on test right now. We'll have the harvest data here this fall. But this last group, 2016 born calves, were killed there last fall. And Anodyne, a bull that you guys saw over here, that bull was in this group of 15 other sires. And here's just kind of some rough stats on what the whole group, what this average of about 350 or 250 calves did, graded 95% choice or better. 65% of them graded upper 2/3 choice or higher. Okay, so what would qualify for an upper 2/3 grid? Dry matter intake on a pound basis was about 26 pounds. They gained 5.3, converted at 4.9 to 1. They were moving right along, and it was a great feeding weather there last fall, and that aided to it. But I think again it aided to basically, and these are primarily straight Hereford genetics. Okay, they use a little bit of Red Angus, but it's primarily straight Hereford genetics that are going at this Olson Ranch. So yield grade on them was about a 3.6, 3.7 as an average. Olson's take them to heavyweight. Part of our requirement with this data collection point is that they all have to be harvested on the same day, and so they try to get the cattle to all kind of come, and from a feeding standpoint, that's maybe not how you would do it, but from a data collection and to keep that as good and clean as we possibly can, where Dr. Weber and his colleagues look at that data and really like it, we got to kill them on the same day. And so that's one thing that we can kind of sometimes get up there. But genetically, I think these cattle really rung the bell. Just to kind of pull the Sandhills farms back in, and I don't know of another program that's put more young bulls in the young sire reference program than what Sandhills has done. And I think any seed stock producer in here has the responsibility to the commercial clientele, is that they're supposed to be the source of the knowledge. They're supposed to be the expertise, experts when it comes to supplying you the genetics. You don't, you guys do your homework and you spend all that time, but I doubt many of you can go back 5 or 6 or 7 generations in a pedigree like Kevin can. and talk about the udders and the feet and the longevity and all those things about it. Same thing with, you know, breeding programs, and this program that was built, you heard about it on the legacy and holding up to that. And I think that's one thing that Kevin really does a great job of, is that he's not afraid to maybe take a chance or expose his genetics in a real world situation like that. He's taking that chance, and so he can bring the very best and make the best mating decisions that he possibly can, and bring that back into his program to offer you the best. And so I bring that up because there's a couple of bulls here, the 167Y bull, the Anodyne bull, that you've got a chance to look at. They've gone through that program. Okay, the ribeye here at the top has as well. Access bull has done that, and you know, there's a long list of bulls. And I gave Kevin a hard time when I got here. I was going to put some of his younger bulls in the PowerPoint here, but I couldn't copy him. He's got kind of like a copyright on his website. So I said, you got to change that. I need to freshen this up a little bit. But I thought it was kind of neat that you got to see a couple of those herd bulls there today. Another thing that is definitely not going away, and one thing that, you know, has probably been more rapidly adapted than any other genetic tool or selection tool that we've had in this industry, is genomics and DNA. Whoever thought that a bunch of cowboys would want to get around a room and talk about DNA and all these chromosomes and XYs, and I mean, list goes on and on. But you know, DNA, you know, we offer a genomically enhanced EPD, and we're working, moving to a new updated genetic evaluation that is going to incorporate those markers and utilize those markers a lot more efficiently than what we're doing today. But right now in the system, we have about 35,000 genotypes collected, and the one thing, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have your homework done on this, but what this really allows us to do over a pedigree estimate or over just a phenotype, you know, the animals not all the time get 50% from mom and 50% from dad. And the best way to think about that is just your brothers and sisters. And I think all of you in the room would say, well, I'm better than my brother. You know, I might not be as good looking as my sister, but I have an advantage on her there. Okay? You have the same parents, but inherently you have different advantages, whether that's throwing a football, whether that's you like farming better than you like raising cattle, whatever it may be. We have that same genetic capability in cattle to be able to select for and make those decisions off of, that can really move us forward. And so basically what we're trying to get at is find the good genes versus the bad genes. The good genes versus the bad genes, and try to find those genetics and those markers for a specific trait like birth weight, a specific trait like marbling or ribeye, whatever it may be. Find the most favorable markers and then propagate them. Okay? Find the ones that are homozygous unfavorable for Cavanese and get rid of them early on in life. That is the real advantage, and folks that are doing that are really trying to, again, your seed stock provider is trying to give you the best tools in those young bulls as you can possibly get. So a non-parent bull, you know, that would maybe have just a pedigree estimate turned in, would maybe have a birth weight accuracy of 0.12. Okay, if I turn in a birth weight phenotype and then I genomically enhance that bull, I'm going to get his accuracy. And I think that's the one thing we often forget. We get so caught up in the trait itself, we don't look at the proof behind them. Okay, you open up any stud catalog, you're going to get a high accuracy animal that has a 0.9, 0.95, 0.99. That's as high as you can get. Some of these young bulls don't have a lot of proof behind them, but what a lot of our seed stock producers, and I think Kevin has embraced here at the ranch, even though financially he's taken on that cost, what it's giving you guys is young proof and increasing that accuracy on those young bulls. So it's like those animals, depending on whatever trait that it is, having 5 to 9 calves already born. Okay? And so I think that's worth a lot before you go out and take that bull out in the herd. You breed 30 heifers to him and they say, oh my God, I pulled 3/4 of them. Well, this test, this genomic enhancement helps take out that guesswork, and we have a lot less false starts, I guess is a great way to put it. So a Baldy maternal index is set up for a crossbreeding situation where I'd select a Hereford bull to go on a set of British-based cows. And it's set up like what Dare was talking about, with the economic impact of keeping back a percentage of those females and then selling the rest of them on a dual-based grid, through the feedlot, retaining ownership on them and selling them on a dual-based grid. And so the majority of that calf crop, keeping 30% of the females, majority of them are going to be terminal progeny. Okay? All right, and so what this index accounts for, it takes into account cavities, fertility, and how we calculate it today is through scrotal. And it's one thing that I'm excited to tell you about that we're changing, because we need to change it, and we've got a better trait to replace it. Scrotal itself is a great indicator of sexual puberty, but a poor indicator of fertility. And there's a lot of data and science that shows that. And some, it was the best thing, and that's the only thing we had really as a fertility trait at the time when we put these indexes together. The other thing that it has a big influence on this index is weaning weight. There's a positive influence on weaning weight, and then a negative down pressure on yearling weight. Okay, and so we can try to keep cow size in check. All right, and so we want that rapid, good early growth, and hopefully find those genetics that kind of shut down. We're also weighing ribeye and marbling in it because we're retaining ownership. And the one thing that I get when I talk to producer groups like this is, well, I don't retain ownership, this index can't work for me. I'll tell you is that somebody is that's buying those calves at weaning time. And so I think the folks that start paying a little more attention to that can start to build some of that profit, right? Some of that profit into their programs and create a relationship, whether you find out later that you need to feed them because and capture that genetic value, or you get a repeat buyer. And I'm sure there's several of you in here that guys have bought your calves for the last 5, 10, 15 years because you're a reputation outfit and you have supply those genetics. And so if you're just selling them at weaning, take advantage of that marketing opportunity if you are making that commitment to put those good genetics as far as end product and carcass and that into your program. So female index, we're keeping those good black baldies or red baldies back in the operation, and then we're selling the rest, and it's set up on a grid-based system. Okay, so those two traits that we're going to add here this fall, here around annual meeting time, is 1, sustained cow fertility, and 2, dry matter intake. So sustained cow fertility is going to replace scrotal in our female index models. Because of whole herd reporting and our cow herd inventory based system, we know exactly what females calve and we know exactly what females don't calve. Okay? Again, remember I talked about the strength of our whole herd reporting program. We have that information coming in our breeders. And if they don't comply, well, they don't get a set of values. All right, and so this was built off of that. And so what we're looking at, some of you guys may be familiar with the stayability trait that Red Angus or Simmental has. And this trait is a little bit similar to that, but we're looking at the ability of a female to calve through 12 years of age or having 10 calvings. Okay, the old traditional stayability EPD was built off of 6. Okay, and it was a pass or fail if she got to 6. And so we didn't have any informative information coming in to say, okay, well, she calved as a 2-year-old, she didn't calve as a 3-year-old, she calved as a 4-year-old. All that good information on a young female when we're trying to figure out, can she make it or can she not in the herd? Those old traditional stayability models didn't do that. Okay? Hardest time to get a female bred back is after that first calf, right? Okay, and so we're going to measure that each calving that she has, and she's going to get either a 1 or a 0. Okay, and she's going to get a favorable score if she does calve every year or not. So how it looks, it's kind of based off of a probability. So if I've got a sire with a 25, I've got a sire B with a 10, the difference is 15. What we can expect out of sire A's daughters is that there's going to be a 15% more likely chance of them making it to age 12. Okay, or 10 calvings. Make sense? The difference there, just numerically, 25 versus a 10 is a 15 there. And we got a 15% more likely chance of that female having a calf there every year. So that's going to come, and again, this is not rock hard science. We've talked about some ways that we can show this as far as what traits go into an index, but this is kind of what BMI is going to look like similarly to this. So you can see that the big driver here in this index is going to be sustained cow fertility, that lowly heritable trait that we have, and that is heavily weighted. But you can see by putting 1 unit of change or selection pressure on this index, we get an across the board improvement almost in every other trait based off of the balance of these EPDs and their economic impact in this total production system. Okay? Another index that we have is the Cavanese index, and so if you're wanting to find that Hereford bull to use on a set of virgin heifers, this is the index that you probably need to select for. Again, the thought is that you'll keep back a few females. The majority of them are going to be sold at weaning, and we have it built in the economic parameters where they can hang on the rail and do you some good. And so again, fertility's in there. A big weighting on this is maternal Cavanese, and Cavanese, like what you might expect, we're trying to find those, identify those sires that can really work in those heifer programs. We have a Bos Indicus, basically an index as well for the Brahman influence females. Again, it's set up just like BMI, but the majority, the majority of the emphasis, there's a little bit more emphasis on fertility to make up for that Brahman difference that we have sometimes, that complementary difference. So it's set up just the same as almost a BMI, but the big difference there is just a little bit more emphasis on fertility, which will be sustained cow fertility. CHB is a Certified Hereford Beef Index, and that is our terminal index. All right, and so that's where we're not keeping back one single replacement. It's Hereford bulls going on British cows with the thought that we're going to sell them all at weaning. We're going to feed them out, retain them through the finishing phase, and so obviously, like what you'd expect, there's a lot of growth or emphasis put on weaning weight and yearling weight. Ribeye and marbling are heavily weighted in this index as well. And then there's negative down pressure on back fat to try to ensure that we keep a good yield grade in those cattle, but we also protect Cavanese. And there's a Cavanese requirement in there on that selection criteria. Okay, terminal index of the thought of retained ownership. The one thing that we don't have accounted for in our CHB index or terminal index today is dry matter intake. So we're going to add sustained cow fertility into our female indexes, and then we're going to add intake into all of our indexes. Okay, and that's one thing. We've got the gain component taken care of in the growth parameters and yearling weight, but who knows how much they're eating. And so because of our young sire testing program and the National Reference Sire program at Simplot and Olson's, along with several of our other breeders that have put in some of these facilities, we've been able to collect and gather up enough data in order to form an EPD on intake itself. And with the genomic component added to it, every animal in our database will have dry matter intake EPD. So we're looking at just strictly intake, not RFI. We're strictly looking at intake on a pounds basis. And so if we've got a sire A with a 1.5, a sire B with a negative 1.5 for a trait, the difference there is 3, and what we'd expect, sire B's progeny are going to consume 3 less pounds per day throughout that finishing phase on a dry matter basis. And so if we can find the cattle that can grow and take off like a dirt bike and not consume a lot of feed, boy, I think we're really getting to something here where we can capture those cattle that are, sustainable is that buzzword that's out there, but really, I mean, you talk about a breed that has an advantage in that. I think Hereford does that really, really well. And so that intake EPD is going to go in all 4 of our indexes, and you say, well, why would you put it in a female index? Remember that a majority of those progeny are being culled. All the males, and then a good majority of that calf crop or those cull heifers are going to be fed somewhere. And I'll tell you this, the data shows that there's about a 60% correlation between intake and feed efficiency of that female out on pasture and what her sister would be eating in the feedlot. And so it's pretty highly related. And there's more research that needs to be done on that. But I think it's a really important trait that we're going to look at. So we've talked about the Meat Animal Research Center, and so I'll just show you the validity behind adding this trait into this terminal index, why I think it's so important. They haven't developed an across-breed EPD at the Meat Animal Research Center yet. Not all breed associations have an intake or an RFI or a residual gain EPD to be able to do that. They have the basic traits, birth weight, weaning weight, yearling weight, milk, all those things. The carcass traits, those are pretty easily to capture and measure. But to be able to get this individual feed intake data, you've got to put in these expensive systems and have the cattle EIDs, and you've got to do all that stuff. It's not maybe feasible yet at this point to just go hog wild and everybody do that. And so at the Meat Animal Research Center, they summarized some data over the last 8-9 years that looked at this, and they kind of put together a Journal of Animal Science paper that showed the differences between Hereford, Angus, all the breeds that they have on record there. And so all the information was in grams and kilograms and all that stuff, and I said, well, this ain't gonna matter to anybody, grams or kilograms. So I wanted to kind of extrapolate it out to what it would be, in a kind of a real world kind of scenario that we have. So the one thing I had to do, Angus is always set at 0 because that's the breed that everybody compares to in that meat animal research data. And so I said, okay, I've got a 650 pound steer and I want to get him to 1,400 pounds. And I said, a typical gain, average daily gain per day would be that everybody could be comfortable with is 4 pounds. All right, it's good genetics will do 4 pounds a day in that finishing phase. And I said a feed conversion would be somewhere around 6 to 1, right? 6 pounds of feed to get 1 pound of gain. Thought that would be a good number everybody could get around. So that's where I set Angus. Okay, 24 pounds, they're eating 24 on a dry matter intake basis. They're gaining 4 pounds today, their conversion 6 to 1. Easy math, right? It doesn't matter where I set that number at, it's all relative in this. Okay, it's all relative because what I did from there, that base, I took the intake differences, then I took the gain differences, and then subtracted or added from that base of what Angus has. Okay, and so you'll look at Hereford, and these are the 5 breeds that I pulled out just to talk about and look at, no particular reason, but I would say, those breeds probably make up the majority of what you're utilizing in your crossbreeding programs. Okay. And if I left somebody off, it wasn't intentional. But from a Hereford standpoint, we rank very, very favorable in dry matter intake relative to Angus, and you can see those differences as we go down. From a gain standpoint, Angus did gain the best. Okay, there was no other breed that gained any more than them, even though Hereford was 8 hundredths behind. Red Angus was about 15 hundredths behind. 4 hundredths again, pretty comparable. Okay, All right, so the feed conversion looks like that. We had a major advantage in feed conversion. And based off of that theoretical example that I came up with, that, okay, I have that 650 pound steer that I want to get to 1,400 pounds. This was the days on feed that required to do that. Again, these are straight bred cattle. Straight bred Angus, straight bred Hereford, red Angus, Simmental, straight bred. Okay? And so, you know, Angus required the shortest amount of days. They gained the best. You know, we came in three days behind them. Okay? So what's it look like on an economic basis? Okay? And so I went into the USDA and figured a 5-year average of a typical finishing feedlot diet. Okay? And I took that math and then multiplied it by, you know, their gain differences and to figure a cost to gain. And you know, and we're about 3 cents cheaper cost to gain difference. We had the cheapest cost to gain. Total feed cost in a 1 year's period of time, we had about a $20 advantage per year. Okay, a $20 advantage per year to the straight bred Angus because of a comparable gain, what I'll tell you, and a marked advantage in intake and consumption. And that is efficiency. Being able to eat less and still gain the same amount. So this is a 5-year weighted average, a $20 advantage per year. So red Angus and Simmental, another British maternal breed going in and maybe doing some complementary work. Simmental, I think the question was asked, you know, in that finishing phase, you know, if I go ahead and use a continental breed to come in there, maybe you're going to give up a little bit. $22 to a Hereford Angus cross, you know, or just a straight Hereford, that genetic inherent difference there. And so, you know, it's not big numbers, but I think it matters and it adds up. And I think it shows why what we're trying to do at the association and build as many key economically relevant traits in these selection tools. That way you can make better decisions with. And so by the time you roll around to next bull buying season, you're going to have these new improved indexes with this updated information in it. And so be happy to talk to you more about that here, but that's just kind of what that looks like, relative change in each EPD resulting from just a 1 unit selection on CHB index, a 25 versus a 26. This is the improvements that you're going to make by each trade as you're going forward. I'll end with this. And I think any time that as you go to make purchasing decisions, it's important to compare what numbers that you're looking at to the breed average. Okay? And I know Kevin brought up the point that you know, Mark puts out a crossbreed EPDs, and we can talk about that later if you want. But you know, the big thing I think is you come to sale and you're looking at buying Hereford genetics, you need to have a good understanding and hopefully the producer puts it in their catalog, the Hereford breed average and the percentile table where you can compare it. Okay? And so right here is the breed averages for the indexes, and here's just a bull. Pretty darn good bull, John Lowen, that puts together, you know, some really good indexes, because antagonistically, you know, we've got a BMI that's high, that's a 30, well above the breed average, and a 44 on CHB. And so, you know, that's a bull that can then put back some females and offer you some really good terminal progeny as well. And so always compare that. EPDs are meant to rank animals and compare within a breed and have the ability to compare across the whole breed, no matter where you're at and located in the U.S. And so take advantage of them and utilize your seed stock producer as well as the association anytime. Levi is very well versed in this information, and he's your field man in this area. Or drop me an email line or give me a call sometime. Be happy to talk to you about bulls or what's going on at the association. Thank you.